Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. Loaded up. We'll check in with Brandon Vogel, who, brother, went overtime with the latest Hail Varsity magazine issue. His story, as he was able to rank all of the Nebraska Big Ten games since the Big Red joined. What an undertaking. We'll step through that with Brandon Vogel, get his take. Can't wait to see and read that story. In hour two, the pride of the Buffalo Bills, proud member of the Bills, Jeremiah Sirles, going to be with us. We'll talk playoff football with him, some Husker football thoughts with Sirles. Gary Barnett will join us. We'll talk more about quarterbacks and the portal. And Coach Barnett will talk a little NFL with us as well, because it is flat out a juicy weekend of quarterback matchups. And, this time of year is incredible. Just spitballing with Junior. If Cincy gets to the AFC title game and Kansas City wins, it'd be a fun roadie next weekend. We will make Mama pay for that. And then Denny Burke's Best Bets with VSiN Sports Network. Numbers to get in today, 466-3776. 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at HailVarsity.com and can always find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, Chris Schmidt at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. So plenty of news and notes to get to. A junior day for Nebraska football tomorrow. Who's going to be in town for that? We'll lay that out there. Some thoughts with just what Casey Thompson can be for Nebraska. We'll dive in there in a moment. But you've had some breaking news today with the NSAA. I'm going to start off with some high school ball. And you had a lengthy meeting today. Good reporting here by Luke Mullen out of the Journal-Star with this. And the board of directors for the Nebraska School Activities Association had a meeting today. I think it started at 10. And a vote was taken by the board of directors that Gretna must vacate their 2021 football state championship. You're asking yourself, how does that happen? Why? Well, they used an ineligible player. So you had the Dragons take out Westside in that defensive struggle 7-3. They survived Lincoln East. So this year we'll have no Class A state champion. Let's dive into this and give you two reasons as to why you'd have to vacate a championship. What would deem a player ineligible? Clearly there are transfer rules and a window where you got to sit out. That isn't this. It's one of two things, okay? Either the player's too old, 19's the cutoff, or you didn't have a player pass enough classes to be eligible. This happened when I was in high school with a different sport. It was golf, and I think the Southeast golf team did really well, but they had a player that was playing. He was a freshman, but playing up on varsity. And the golf run Southeast went on, and I'm not sure if they won state or where they placed, whatever. It came down to the academic side of things. And this guy was a buddy of mine. He didn't end up passing enough classes as a freshman. So the success and progress was taken away. You got Michigan when it comes to vacated. Elijah, you played high school ball. You're part of some playoff runs. This is such a punch in the face to Gretna and you're sad. You're also on the other side of this fence feeling for West Side and other teams that Gretna beat to get to the state championship game and win it. You feel sick for all parties here because you don't want to get a championship that way, the vacation or vacating, and you don't want to absolutely have what you worked all season for taken away. And there's been instances where the NSAA's had to rule on appeals when it comes to age. And in some of those instances, it's been a kid that might be older or turn 20 before the season's end, okay, or a certain point in high school. And those instances, those appeals usually center around a kid and his earlier academic challenges if there's some special education that's been involved, all right? And a lot of times coaches will want a kid to be part of it and to play or just have that team structure. So the news is this, is Gretna has had to vacate their Class A championship in high school football.
And Stu Pospisil just released an article here a few minutes ago reporting that the player in question did not live, his primary residence was not in Gretna, it was in fact in Papillion. And that would be a case I think of, then they'd be worried about recruiting, that a player who was not from Gretna was playing on the Gretna football team.
So Stu says it's a boundary thing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
But
and the Gretna argument was that he lived with separated parents, and his father, in fact, lived in Gretna. His mother lived in Papillion, but they didn't officially change the primary residence for the son.
So you want to talk about the mother of technicality. So I just said there's two things that can get you popped, and that's your kid's too old or you don't pass enough. The districting stuff is, oh, man. And I know what the letter of the law is supposed to say with, all right, you live in this district. Well, let's be real. And kids don't live across the street from their high school or within the boundaries necessarily. And you have kids transfer quite a bit for different reasons, some of it academic, some of it athletic. And you know kids. Maybe you have family friends that have a kid go to a different high school and participate in activities as long as they do it within the appropriate time frame and the kid's accepted to school. Usually it's all right. So Stu's saying it was a districting thing. Well, that's one technicality. I mean, who raised it? And somebody had to raise this objection, right? And then lay out some evidence and say, okay, this is illegal. They aren't going to release the player in question.
There is a name in the article, I believe.
Didn't say it.
Let me see if I can re-find the article again.
Okay.
They had the family's name at least.
Okay.
I'm not sure they had the kid's name. Because the parents they were apparently separated this season, but not legally separated under the letter of the law. So he spent the football season living with his father, who apparently moved down to Gretna once his parents were separated. It is the Boganoski family.
Okay.
He did play in the state championship game against West Side, where he caught 6 catches for 47 yards in the title game.
It's a good number.
It is a good number. Tyson Boganowski, a junior who previously played for Papillion La Vista South.
Okay. Well, there you go. And this is controversial. There's some uproar.
Now that I see that, I mean, if it's a player being 20 years old and was held back a couple years and is playing in state championship, I'd understand maybe. But this just feels overreaching. And it was an 8-0 vote, according to Stu. An 8-0 vote by the NSAA board of directors to keep the title away from Gretna.
Wow. Well, we'll do some more digging on this and can chime in on that. 466-3776 or 800-825-5865. Want to switch gears, and we'll have some Junior Day thoughts with some of the recruits Nebraska's looking at, specifically quarterbacks for 2023. Let's ask this question here. And you remember Russell Wilson. I remember that game pretty vividly. Nebraska Wisconsin, the first Big Ten ball game under the lights for the Big Red, and it didn't go well past halftime for Nebraska against Russell Wilson's team. We have this era of transfer. We have this era of the portal, and one of the first dudes to make a splash that really kind of tipped the tables and kicked this whole thing off was Russell Wilson. You know what he's done in Seattle? And quite honestly, he enhanced what had been a management position at Wisconsin, the position of, all right, pro-style quarterback, hand the ball off to a killer running back, have a great offensive line, get J.J. Watt off the edge, play defense. Wisconsin's going to grind you down. They're going to win 24-13, right? And they're going to just bludgeon you for 4 quarters with their physicality. Well, for the first time in a while, Wisconsin got themselves the dynamic quarterback in the Big Ten. You'd had pretty good quarterback play in the Big Ten for a while, specifically Drew Brees, right? The Jim Everetts of the world, a lot of Purdue quarterbacks. You sprinkle in some of the Michigan guys between Brady and Henson and Gerbach and some of those cats. But Wisconsin changed the game for a team that went to the Rose Bowl. They finished 10-3. They lost to a really good Oregon team in a shootout. They got upended by Sparty, and they also won a Big Ten championship. He had different divisions then, but Russell Wilson was the key cog with his skill set and playmaking. You didn't know what you were going to get in Russell Wilson. Okay? He was a grad transfer, probably the most impactful grad transfer for a long time until this new era we're talking about. And with Russell Wilson, he was maybe a 500 quarterback or a game or two below 500, a 5-7, 6-6 type guy at North Carolina State. Well, he was also playing baseball for the Rockies, spent time during the summer in Double-A, and had a real rub with his coach. So when push came to shove, Russell's like, dude, I'm out. I'm going to go to Wisconsin. Worked out, came in, voted a captain. Barry's talked about this with us, Barry Alvarez. And Barry's like, look, dude, he won his teammates over, hardest worker, best player, yada, yada, yada. And he changed the game for Wisconsin. They've not had a quarterback like him since. And while they've had Rose Bowl teams, they were able to have a Rose Bowl team with a very dynamic offense. So when we talk about Nebraska football, is Nebraska going to be able to get that type of pop? I know Russell Wilson's a hard comparison, but is Casey Thompson, is he that type of guy that can come in, super mature, film nut, all about football, eats right, doesn't drink, does all the things that prove and show his dedication? And then we've also seen his skill set, his accuracy, and we know he's mobile. He just hasn't ran a lot at Texas because he had a 1,000-yard rusher. Is Casey the type of guy that can be a Nebraska version of Russell Wilson? And I'm not talking Rose Bowl or knocking on the door of a top 10 ranking. Got to temper that a little bit. The team hasn't won more than 5 games. But you could get a real difference maker in at quarterback. Look at Joe Burrow. He had a year where I think LSU went 9-3, 8-4, something like that his first year. But then you saw it really take off with a second year. And we know what LSU did, winning a championship, going 15-0, and a good defense and a great offense with a lot of NFL talent. And Burrow's another recent example of that. And you're going to get to hear him Sunday with our NFL coverage. Now, Casey Thompson could do that. Could move Nebraska to a different level in a great way. The examples are pretty startling in Nebraska football history when you get that great quarterback, Tommy Frazier, right? You're knocking on a championship by his sophomore year. Zach Taylor. We talk about Zach. Well, Zach stabilized at least a couple of good years in Nebraska football. He was more than a Band-Aid. He was a playmaker and an offensive player of the year. You even look at Taylor Martinez. T-Magic really made Nebraska's offense explosive with the offense that Tim Beck had. And then now we look at Casey Thompson, who is the guy you bring in because he's experienced. You want him to go win you some ball games. It's win now. Could he have that same effect for Nebraska where not only do you get over the hump, but you get over the hump quite a bit, and you've got a game changer at quarterback.
And I think the key, and something that happened with all these quarterbacks, and I think Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Taylor Martinez, is that not only were these guys good fits within the offense, but the coaching staff adjusted their offense to be able to bring to light the strong suits of this quarterback. So it's not just coming down to how well is this quarterback fit, it's how well can the coaching staff change their offense, amend it, just to really bring out the areas that Casey Thompson is good at. If the coaching staff can do that well, and if the fit works, then we have potential for that, but still a lot of time for that to be, time will tell, I guess.
Well, absolutely, and this isn't overhype or put added pressure. I mean, there's enough pressure to get to a bowl game this year for Nebraska. They went quarterback shopping. They've got a couple to choose from on top of what's on campus, and it's going to be a dynamite quarterback battle. Can't wait for it this spring. But that's the hope if you're a Nebraska fan. You get your own version of Russell Wilson, and it shakes out in a tremendous season. Brandon Vogel's next on Hail Varsity. Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes, that's awesome.
Thanks for spending time. Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, as we hit on the topic of Casey Thompson. And can you have a pop for Nebraska football similar to Russell Wilson, what he did for Wisconsin, and Joe Burrow, what he did for LSU? I know those are two lofty quarterbacks, a Rose Bowl and a national championship, but Nebraska and quarterback play has been kind of make or break since they've joined the Big Ten. An incredible project in the latest Hail Varsity magazine from managing editor Brandon Vogel with us now. At Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter is where you find him. And be sure to get his book with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion. Vogues, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. We will get your take here on, I guess, outlook here for Casey Thompson. And we can throw Chuba in there as well, just because they're the two new names, right? And the impact here, that's a big ask. Can you get that level of quarterback play from an incoming portal guy, but you've seen it work well at two programs in the not-too-distant past? Is that a fair expectation or even thought to have right now with new quarterbacks added to the Nebraska roster? Their outlook here, is that a lot of pressure to ask about?
Probably. Russell Wilson is probably the best, and this was the further back of the two, and I think he was one of the first major graduate transfers. Yes. Mm-hmm. He was a pretty good quarterback at NC State, and Wisconsin got him, and then he went there and had an amazing year. So we're talking top of the scale. Joe Burrow, it took him a year. I remember specifically thinking after his first year at LSU, I was like, okay, well, that was okay. There were some pluses and some minuses there. And then in year two, he goes on to have one of the best seasons for a college quarterback in the history of the game. So definitely talking the top two, well, maybe not the top two, but near the top of what's possible for a transfer quarterback. With Casey Thompson, I think the interesting thing to me with him is he has a different skill set. And really, anything, and this isn't a slight at Adrian Martinez whatsoever, but he was Nebraska's quarterback for the entirety of the Scott Frost era to this point. So everything that he was good at doing, the things that maybe he wasn't quite as good at doing, it was like all of it was tailored towards what he was gonna be. And now you get to tailor it to somebody else. And how does that shake out? I think there's some really positive parts of Casey Thompson's game. I look at the touchdown to interception ratio, 24-9, looks pretty good from this past season. That said, 9 interceptions over 10 games, you're averaging about 1 a game. So that gives me a little bit of pause. So it's not a slam dunk for me, kind of either way. I think the more interesting part of it is like, okay, you've got this new guy with a new skill set. How does that change what you do, and how can you tailor it to him?
That's going to be so key, and it'll be also interesting to see how that tailoring goes with your new offensive coordinator. But there's had to have been some collaboration. You're scanning the portal for, all right, I like what this kid does. Let's try and go get him, and now let's get your hands on him and start working here towards spring ball. So, what is possible with the portal, right? Specifically at quarterback for Nebraska. Brandon, quarterback play will no doubt come up in your project, your story. Lay it out for folks in the latest issue of Hail Varsity Magazine, what you did, how long it took, and the what punted this off for you. Why did you dive in so deep? This sounds like a really, really cool story.
Yeah, so I kind of set out. I've long wanted, and even though it's totally subjective, it's just my kind of interpretation and opinion of it. But I long thought it would be useful to kind of look at every Nebraska game. So I started on this beat in 2011, which happened to be Nebraska's first year in the Big Ten. So it was kind of convenient from that point. And long thought, so we have these games, and a lot of games that you probably forget. Nebraska beats Florida Atlantic by 4 touchdowns, and it's like, okay, that went exactly like you thought it would go. But how entertaining was that game? How good of a football game was it? And this sort of exists outside of whether Nebraska won or lost. Not entirely, because that matters when you get into different games. But just like, was this enjoyable? Was there something interesting that happened here? Et cetera, et cetera. So what's the score for a game like that? And then what's the score for games that all of us kind of remember? And there are plenty to choose from this year because all of Nebraska's losses were close. A game like 2011 against Ohio State, where Nebraska gets booed going off the field at halftime, and then comes back and has the biggest comeback in school history in the second half and wins it. Where does a game like that rate? So I set out to do that long because I've always wanted to do it, and you'll have to read the January issue to find out where all those games fell. But even if it's just kind of my opinion, which it is, you end up with all of these scores, and then you can kind of do some sorting and poking around and seeing things. Like if I had to ask you, Chris and Elijah, what is the most kind of entertaining, just from a football perspective, not wins or losses, but what's the most entertaining Big Ten series Nebraska has? So against the Big Ten opponent, like what immediately comes to mind?
There's two. There's two. It's always just some sort of sick, wild, crazy ball game against either Northwestern, or you're out of alcohol, good or bad, against Sparty.
And I would even add, aside from a 3-year stretch, Iowa. There's been a lot of really entertaining games against Iowa. I know there was like 2011 through 2012, Nebraska was really beating them pretty good. But I feels like out of the 10
You'll always
matchups,
remember the 2014 Iowa. Because it was a win, and then how are they going to
out of the 10 matchups? It felt like 5 or 6 would come down to the wire.
Yeah. So like something even as maybe perhaps silly as this, like, gives you a way to measure that. And I'm kind of with you, like, Chris, the first thing I thought of was Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know, like, 90% of those games have been close. So I was like, okay, well, I went through and, like, rated all these games. And that's all I tried to do. And then I went back and saw, like, okay, well, what's the average rating? Does this actually match up with reality at all? And Northwestern was the highest average game rating in the West Division. Mm-hmm. Michigan State was number one. Michigan State and Nebraska, when you stop and, like, go back and look at it, and there's been a couple of clunkers in there for Nebraska, but they've really played some classic games. And then Penn State also showed up, which not as big a sample size on them, but you remember those first kind of 3-4 games in the Big Ten era, all pretty close, all pretty meaningful for Nebraska. Iowa, Elijah, and I agree with what you're saying. It ended up the lowest in my scores because it's just been a lot of pain for Nebraska, particularly of late. You got that 2014 game. I think it was the 2012 game where, Rex Burkhead had been injured, and then he comes in and just, like, guts it out on a terrible windy and cold day where nobody can do anything. So you had some good points for Nebraska there, but the past, 7 years of Iowa just beating Nebraska, both in blowing Nebraska out a couple of times and then just finding a way to continually beat them by a field goal or a touchdown, ended up putting that one at the bottom based on my interpretation.
So this is less like, if you think back to the NCAA football games, I'm not sure if you played them, but after every single game you had, which was close, it gave you a game grade on the ESPN, like, classic games list. It would make a little composite for you. Is it like that, or is it more like, as a Nebraska fan, you lose some points if Nebraska were to lose by a field goal in painful fashion?
Yeah, it's probably more like the EA Sports thing.
Okay. I
specifically set out, so it's not like if Nebraska wins, that doesn't automatically mean it's a good score. The 2019 game against Northwestern is a good one, a good example here because, we remember that game. It's undeniably cool when you have a walk-on defensive back hit the game-winning field goal. Memorable finish, carry the guy off the field on your shoulders. That game actually scored pretty low for me because I specifically remember that, and that was the moment in 2019 where, Nebraska came into that season pretty highly regarded. A lot of people thought they were going to take a jump, myself included, and that was the one where I was like, this wasn't a particularly good Northwestern team. They should have beat this team by more. And I remember coming out of that game being like, Nebraska's in trouble. So that one ended up scoring below average for me, even though it was a very memorable and fun day if you were a Nebraska fan. So it's kind of a mix of both.
Brandon, I got to ask the question, what was the top game?
Read and find out.
I'll say this. It was the top 10 was dominated by the Bo Pelini era.
Okay.
I gave a clue, I think, in my first answer to this line of questioning. But you think back to that first year that Nebraska played in the Big Ten, and you can probably run down the scores and come up with which one ended up number one.
Vogues, I'm going to need like 5 more minutes on the other side if Junior will let you do that. That good?
Yep.
Okay, so Brandon Vogel's story goes through all of the Big Ten ball games for Nebraska, and we go down and I'm just going to I have nothing to do with it other than just smile about it, but he kind of ranks them. And real quick, Vogues, here, you wanted to score him. Like, is it out of 10, Bud? Is it out of 5? About 30 seconds here before we got to take a timeout. But how did you rate him?
Yeah, we're on a 0.0 to 10.0 scale. So a 10.0 is the highest score possible. 0.0 is the lowest. Nebraska did not, in my opinion, hit a 10.0, but they definitely hit a 0.0. And you can probably remember that game too.
Hang on, Vogues. We'll be with you about 2 minutes here. And I want to get into to one of the series in the Big Ten. that you dove deep into. Brandon Vogel with us, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine. More thoughts as he went through all the Big Ten games for the Big Red. Hail Varsity continues.
Hello, listener. This is Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and Brandon Vogel staying on with us here. His feature in the upcoming Hail Varsity magazine. He goes through all the Big Ten ball games and rates them. What's most memorable with so many of those encounters? At Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter, and can subscribe, HailVarsity.com/subscribe. His podcast, I-80 Preview, also nominated for one of the top sports podcasts in college football this year. So bravo to Vogues. Vogues, I want to jump in to the Spartan series. As weird as Northwestern was, Michigan State always just trades punches with Nebraska, and it's incredible. From this year's overtime and 0 first down second half to the escorted out of bounds, and Riley makes a sweet catch over number 5 in college football playoff bound D'Antonio. I thought he was going to annihilate about 3 officials. And then the Alonzo Moore almost 19-point Riley. Man, that game in 14.
Yeah, when you really stop and go back and look at it, there's a lot of those in there. And I thought, actually that game in 2015, which was kind of the lone true bright spot of that season, certainly in conference play, actually ended up rating lower than I thought it would. And I kind of, as I sat there and mulled the score that I gave it, I was like, this was nice, but it kind of came from nowhere, and you had the call at the end where, Nebraska fans are happy it went the way that it did. Could have easily gone the other way. So, honestly, the highest Michigan State game, and so this is one, kind of going back to what Elijah was asking, where the Nebraska perspective, I think, comes into play a lot. The highest-rated Michigan State game was when Bo Pelini and the Huskers beat a top 10 Michigan State team 24-3. Because I think if you're a Nebraska fan,
the Cousins game. Cousins, they killed them.
The best game that you're going to have is when Nebraska comes in, they're at home, but they play a team that matters, and they kind of control play the entire time. I mean, it's the thing that's been missing, really, since that point. It's Nebraska's last win over a top 10 team. And they came in and dominated that. They almost had a shutout. I think Michigan State got that field goal at the end of the second half, but minus that, Nebraska totally controlled that game, and they looked like a really, really good team. And those 2011 and 2012 teams were really, really good. You have the Jamal Turner game, which I was fortunate to cover in person, and that was an amazing game as well. But points for just going out and beating a really good team. So that's actually the one that ended up on top for me.
Yeah, I mean, they handcuffed that squad fierce. I mean, they killed them. Now, here's what sucks. I remember that game, and it was really cool to see Nebraska do that if you're a big Red fan. I just remember what the hell the following week, back to Northwestern. You get a freaking 3-win Northwestern team come in and sting you.
Yep, Ken Coulter goes nuts. That Michigan State team had Le'Veon Bell too.
I know. Yeah,
you have the benefit of hindsight where you're like, wow, this guy was a really good pro, and Nebraska held him 3 points. But Yeah, that was kind of the overall tenor of the Pelini era. And not so much early on, although that game against Northwestern really might have been the first sign of it, of kind of, Nebraska came in. So they came in pretty high off the Big 12, as we all remember, and they had to adjust. And the Big Ten's just different. It's a league where even a 3-win Northwestern team, like, if you don't play your best, they're going to beat you. And I think that's still something Nebraska's adjusting to.
Last thought here, Vogues. We'll let you get out. Of all the games you've traveled to and covered, is there one season over another that's been more memorable? Do you look at last year because of how masochistic it was in one-score games? Do you look at 14 with, wow, Nebraska was so close to winning 11 games that year? They were up in some of those horrible losses where they got blown out.
Yeah.
They were up double digits. You look at the cardiac factor in 2012. I look at 13 with 2 road wins, that were impressive at Michigan, at Penn State in overtime in a blizzard. Does the first season burn into your mind? What season is kind of a wow factor for you?
I would say the game that probably sticks with me the most is that first Big Ten game. You went on the road to Wisconsin, and all of us, Nebraska fans and Nebraska media members really had no idea what to expect. And you go there and you're like, okay, so this is Big Ten football. I know some Nebraska fans didn't have a great experience with that game, but from just a football perspective and like being in a new place, I thought it was pretty great. For a season, I think it's that 2012 year, because, Nebraska pulled out. It was kind of the opposite of 2020, 2021, in that they pulled out so many of those close games. And they ended up going to to the conference title game. Mm-hmm. And I specifically remember thinking, Nebraska's going to hammer this Wisconsin team. Like, Wisconsin wouldn't even have been there if it weren't for the fact that Ohio State and Penn State couldn't be. And they'd beaten Wisconsin earlier that year in a pretty close game, and boy, did it go the other way. So, as I wrote in the magazine for this feature, it was the last time I was actually confident about anything.
Vogues, well, we'll see if that confidence returns, my friend. Thanks for joining us for an extended segment today.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Brandon Vogel, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine. That's good stuff. Can't wait to read that. I went to the front desk here at the station, and I'm like, where's my Hail Varsity? And it's not here yet. Sadness.
I have noticed that I'm not. Never mind.
What's up?
Oh, I was just going to say, I didn't want to encourage any porch pirates, but sometimes we do have packages just sit in front of the station for a day. I've noticed
Okay,
that.
Well, maybe I need to go outside. Instead of someone delivering it to me in slippers, right? Okay, so NFL on the radar here. Jeremiah Sirles, our favorite Husker sideline guy and longtime NFLer, played in Buffalo, played in Minnesota, spent time in Carolina, of course, with the Chargers as well. So which underdog is most likely to pull off an upset in the divisional round? We'll check in with Danny Burke, Burke's Best Bets from VSiN Sports Network. But you have 4 dogs that are playing really good football right now. You have the Bills, who I know they had some roller coaster times the end of this season, but they look great and may have Chiefs fan will argue with that, but I don't. It's either Mahomes or Allen that are playing their best football right now. There's that was impressive, San Francisco 49ers to go win in Dallas. The Rams have so many weapons. And then you have the new kids that are hot and really just don't know any better at their first rodeo with so much talent in Cincinnati, Burrow, Chase. But the Rams with what they have on both sides of the football. Chew on that. We'll come on back and wind down hour 1 next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Dynamite basketball tonight. Jeff Moats will have it. And it is Northeast and Lincoln Southwest locally. I believe that's over on KFOR.
Yeah, great game here locally on ESPN Lincoln as well, as we have, I believe it's York in town taking on Waverly. So that's a top 5 matchup in Class B.
It is. Connor Clark will have that for you. So, Connor on the call tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, catch local high school ball. Some more fallout here with Gretna having to vacate their Class A title. And you have Gretna's Superintendent Rich Barron said the district was very disappointed. We can translate that for you. That's me talking, not the superintendent, but very disappointed by the NSAA ruling. And a quote here with the World Herald and Stu Pospisil on this coverage. They live in our district, the boy and his dad, but because we don't have an official document, that's what they're nailing us on. So what was the impetus for this? What is causing research, investigation, questioning, and then ultimately vacating a title? It comes down to a kid, per your input here, Elijah, whose folks are separated, and mom lives in Papio, dad lives and moved to Gretna, and a kid that didn't have a Gretna address, fair to say, was playing ball. It wasn't academics, which you lose or can have forfeiture because you're playing an illegal player. Why is a kid illegal? He's illegal based on where he lives now, and that's always been a rule, or you at least have to have that window of transfer time, right?
I believe during my time at
60
Southeast,
days?
I think it was either 60 days or 90 days.
60 or 90, right? The kid's failed too many classes, so he wasn't academically eligible, or he's too old. 19's the cutoff. This is new. And this seems pretty, God, I don't want to say petty, but in the world and climate we live in with transfers, you can hate transfers all you want, but it is happening, okay? You have recruiting, you have transfers. That's the way of the world, and you're going to enforce this now and strip a title. Do you think Gretna should get popped for this? Should lose their Class A championship? They won on the field against Westside, and the kid that is in question here, the family that's in question, he had about 6 catches for 47 yards. Good player, but not household name player. I'm not knocking him. I'm just saying it wasn't like it was a star running back that was carrying the football for 300 yards to force your way into a championship.
Well, what's interesting is I'm not sure if the NSAA thinks they're doing something here, but they're letting the players keep their medals, but they're taking the championship away from the school. So, but at the end of the day, that's still punishment for the players. Is they can't come back 20 years from now and have that night of honor and say, "Hey, we're honoring our 2021."
You can still
football
have
team.
it. There's just no picture by the trophy case,
and they don't get to bring that trophy out for the night. They took away a championship, 4 years of hard work for a lot of these kids based on a technicality, and I hate that.
Yeah, that seems. But what started this process is what I want to know. Who knew something and went to the NSAA and said, hey, we've got a situation here with an illegal player? That's what I'm curious about.
The punishment doesn't seem to fit the crime.
No, and that's the take. Okay, Jeremiah Sirles will lay out some NFL, some Husker thoughts. Gary Barnett next hour. Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Thanks for hanging out. Hour 2 at Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Some more on this Gretna Class A football title vacation, or being vacated. I want to call it vacation. It's been anything but for folks in Gretna today. NFL on our mind, Husker football thoughts. We welcome in our favorite sideline man, Jeremiah Sirles, joining us at Sirles71_HSKR. He is going to be jumping on tables maybe this weekend. I don't know. Sirles, is that part of the plan? Is that part of the weekend festivities for you with your Bills going to Arrowhead?
Man, I wish it was. If I wasn't going to be in L.A. for the NFLPA Bowl, I would 100% be in Kansas City going through tables supporting Bills Mafia. But I will be on a plane to L.A. on Sunday. Well,
at least it'll be, 5 degrees. Plus 1,000 compared to here, but I know you're a cold weather guy. Before we dive into the NFL slate this weekend, brother, get us caught up. You and Johnny Cash been everywhere, man. Been traveling.
Yeah, man. So again, I got certified as an NFL agent this year, so I'm running the gauntlet of senior games. I was in Dallas and Orlando last week for the CGS game and the Hula Bowl, and then I was just up in Minnesota because I have 4 of my guys training up there. And then, again, I leave Sunday here for the NFLPA Bowl. I'll be there till Thursday. And then I fly out to Vegas for the Shrine Bowl, where I'm there till Monday. And then I head home, and it's right back to the grind, man, getting guys ready to go for combine prep and pro days and helping guys try and get to the next level.
That is awesome. Jeremiah Sirles with us, Hail Varsity Radio, our favorite sideline man and NFL vet and certified agent. So what is your words of wisdom? What are the words you tell kids as they get ready for this next step? You lived it.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is it's really easy for kids in this process with the way that the college football era is right now to be focused on a lot of the wrong things. And by wrong things, I mean endorsements off the field, NIL, all that happy horse crap that goes on in college. When you get to the NFL, just because you were the man at college, the NFL doesn't care about that anymore. Their whole sole purpose on all 32 teams is, can you help us win a championship? Can you play and contribute and help us win a championship? And if you can't check both those boxes, they don't care what your brand is. They don't care what your website is. Like, none of that crap matters. And so our big focus at our agency is helping guys understand this is still a football-first league. You get one shot at this thing, and to really put all your chips into the football side, and the off-the-field stuff will come to you afterwards. But I think a lot of guys get it backwards with the agents that are in their ears.
Is it difficult to connect that message? You are right. You're absolutely right. But it is, a lot of it's about branding now, and you get the gravy before you eat your vegetables, so to speak.
Yeah, it's tough because, again, with the landscape of college football changing to where these kids are making money off of their brand and their social media presence in the college world, like telling them, like, hey, that's all great, but like you need to shift your focus to this specific thing. It's a message that it gets across with a lot of guys really well, but with certain other guys, it just doesn't resonate. And that's kind of part of being the agent, is finding the guys that fit well with your personality and understanding that there's guys out there that want to focus on that and they still can focus on that and still be successful in the NFL. I'm not saying just because you focus on that means you won't be, but so much of finding the right guys that fit with you and your personality is half the battle when it comes to recruiting guys.
Sirles, you probably saw that in the locker room with guys that were uber talented and in some instances played okay. They were good enough to be in the league and they were good enough to stay in the league for a while. But, man, maybe the priorities got mixed up, so they didn't hit that mountaintop. They weren't as great as they could have been.
Right, yeah, and that's the thing is, if you come into the league, you can survive your first year because everyone's drinking from a fire hose, right? You're a rookie trying to figure life out, and you can get by, but it's really that second, third, fourth year where you have to reinvent yourself and go back and self-scout and do so much on the football field that if you get to after your rookie year, you kind of think, I've made it, that's where you see guys just that don't have careers, right? Like my goal is I don't care if you're a first-round pick, PFA, sixth round, whatever. Well, I want to help you have a career in the NFL where we're talking second contract, and that's where the money really starts to come. And so that's kind of where we focus on things. My partner's another former NFL player, Zach Zenner. He ran for a zillion yards against the Huskers when we played him here in, I think it was 2012. He played 5 years in the league as a running back, too. So we got a really good group put together, and it's been really fun getting this thing off the ground.
Sirles going to switch gears, talk some Nebraska football. What's your expectation for whoever is Nebraska's next quarterback? And we spent the first segment talking about Casey Thompson, and could he be Nebraska's version of what Russell Wilson did for Wisconsin? I know it's a large ask with what Russell did that first year at Wisconsin, but Casey's a good ball player and has a lot of upside here. We don't know that he'll win the job. A lot of us think that he's the favorite to win the job. But overall, as you look at Nebraska here, what's your ask out of the quarterback spot?
Yeah, I think it's really easy for a lot of people like, well, he's just another Adrian Martinez, right? And I think that's kind of what I've been hearing. But I think a lot that we have to remember is he's got a new OC. He's got a new receivers coach here that everyone's new. And so everyone's building this thing from the ground up. And so I think it's really safe to expect good things out of Casey Thompson based off of what I saw against him last year. I know he didn't have the record, but, man, he can sling it. He can run a little bit. He's mobile, which I think is really important in the Scott Frost Whipple offense, right? I think that that's still going to be a big part of it. And so I expect him to come out and have big expectations and big things, right? You don't transfer from a school like Texas to go sit the bench somewhere. You transfer to go somewhere and contribute. And I think he saw the writing on the wall here of what this place could be, the opportunity. He bet on himself a little bit. And so I expect big things in the spring out of him, and I expect big things out of Purdy, too. I think those two guys will push each other. I think they'll compete really well, and those continue to grow that quarterback room where there's some young guys in there. You got Carlos Torres coming in as a freshman. Like, it's a crowded room, right? But that's all right. Don't shy away from competition. If you do, great. See ya. Like, if you want to stay here and compete, you got some really good competition going in that room right now.
Jeremiah Sirles with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Sirles, obviously the additions at quarterback and wide receiver and running back are going to get all the headlines. But this offense can really only go as far as the offensive line takes them. And I just want to get your take on how big of a jump you think this offensive line can take in only one offseason.
That's the part that I struggle with. You want them to think that they're going to take these leaps and bounds, but you got to replace some pieces too, right? You lose Cam Jurgens, your 3-year starting center. And then you have to kind of, okay, what's next at center position, right? In my opinion, I think you need to move Turner Corcoran to center, which I've heard rumblings about, because you have Teddy Prohaska coming back at left tackle. But the big question marks for me are right guard and right tackle. I think Henry Lutovsky is a guy that I keep hearing great things, and he's a young player, but his tremendous upside. But you look at the right tackle position, and Bryce Benhart didn't have a great year last year. That's not saying he can't turn it around and have a great year this year, but that's a glaring question mark, in my opinion, of, hey, who replaces or who is the starting right tackle? I think there'll be some good competition there. I think Brock Bando will get a couple looks. The transfer from Okie State might get a shot out there, too. I think they're going to rotate some guys in there because that was a piece that really hampered some stuff for us this year that we need to get fixed.
Sirles, to the NFL we go, and let's go to your Bills. They beat Kansas City once. What makes you feel like they can be different in the postseason? Allen's playing great. Give folks a little insight to Joshy and this Bills squad. I know you're still connected with guys up there.
Yeah, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are as good, if not a little bit better than they were last year, but I think the Bills are much better than they were last year, and a lot of that has to do with Josh Allen's maturity level, and his play has just increased throughout the weeks, right? Throughout the years. And I think that Buffalo's going to be a really motivated squad going in there, but Josh is such a great leader. He's kind of a goofy dude. You heard Jordan Poyer when he was mic'd up, like, he's goofy as hell, which is kind of true. He's a goofy guy, but his teammates just love the guy. Because he'll put his body on the line, and he's the ultimate competitor. He's everything you want in a young quarterback in this NFL. Uber talented, all the charisma off the field, and he's going to be a great quarterback in the NFL for a long time.
Tell me what goofy means to you. We know what the definition is, but when you say, all right, Sirles says goofy in a good way, give me an example or how does that kind of endear him to his guys? The toughness, yes, but personality is so important.
Yeah, he's kind of a little kid, like funny-wise, right? He likes little practical jokes, and he likes messing with you, and just little funny things where you're like, dude, this is a billion-dollar organization that handed you the keys of the car at 23 and said, don't wreck it. And you're doing great stuff. Like, you have to kind of remember, still, he's like 24 years old, right? Like, he's only been able to drink for like 3 years. Like, he's still just kind of that goofy, funny kid that he loves to joke around. But that's kind of what makes him so great, too, is like nothing really rattles him, right? Like, he always kind of has that, here we go, roll with the punches, the ebbs and flows of a game, of a season. Like, he's kind of steady Eddie, and that his personality is just like that, right? It's not forced. And so that's just kind of, he's just a funny, goofy, like a guy you'd love to just go hang out with off the field too, but then he can turn the switch and become the ultimate competitor at the same time. And that's what I think is what makes him really, really good.
Well, Sirles, I think if you can take half of the internet making fun of your mustache before the season starts, I think you can take anything during the season, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, he owns that stuff, right? Like, he does it, and Josh Allen looks great in shorts, right? He hikes his shorts up for the pictures type of stuff, and he does the bar stool piece of it, and he's also professional. He gives back. Like, he wears many hats, but that's okay when you go out there and perform, which he's been able to do week in and week out, and now for pretty much 2 years really consistently. Any
practical jokes pulled on you?
No, the one funny Allen story I have is, so him and Sam Darnold were rookies together, right? Mm-hmm. Sam Darnold with the Jets. For Christmas time, if you recall, Sam Darnold got all of his offensive linemen grill tools at that year's 2018. And I don't mean like a grill. I mean like spatula and tongs, right? Big no-no. Terrible gift. And so the offensive lineman for the Jets actually put Sam Darnold's car on blocks as like a joke, as in like, haha, not funny, get us a better gift. Well, Josh came up to me. He was a rookie, and he was like, hey, Sirles, come here. I was like, what's up, dude? He's like, hey, I got you guys all iPads. Like, is that a good enough gift? Or, like, you guys can put my car on blocks. So I was like, that's a good gift, Josh. She'll be okay. Like, he was kind of worried. He just bought a new Range Rover, and he was scared we were going to put his Range up on blocks. So it was pretty funny. But, like, he's just a great kid.
Cincinnati, Tennessee. Can Cincy keep the magic going? Can Zach Taylor continue to force that statue to be built?
I hope so, man. Joe Burrow's really fun to watch. Jamar Chase, like, that's another young guy that's just going to be full of studs, right? But the thing for me is the X factor is, like, is Derrick Henry back in midseason form, or is he still a little rusty? Because if that dude comes back some fresh legs in the playoffs, like, look out any opposing defense that's beat up. And he's just kind of one of those physical phenoms that you're like, oh, he might just be fine because he's just a freak. So, I mean, that's going to be a great game to watch. But I really love watching Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and those guys throw the ball around.
They're fun, and that back shoulder is just undefeated. I mean, they're so good, and it's like telepathic.
Yeah, I mean, and you're like, okay, we got to block Jamar Chase. Like, yeah, well, don't forget about T. Higgins over here. Like, he's pretty dang good, too. And then Uzomah, that tight end's had a breakout. You're like, the weapons on that team have been good for so many years, but it's kind of like everything came together this year perfectly for them at the right time.
Sirles, our dear friend Brandon Vogel did an incredible piece in the latest Hail Varsity magazine, and he went through all the Big Ten games and kind of rated them on an entertainment scale, right? And we get into some of the series of opponents. Was there a team during your time at Nebraska, games against X, say Michigan State or Iowa or Northwestern, or what opponent was kind of the most memorable series in your career?
You know, for me, the most memorable for me, it was kind of weird, right? I did 2 years in the Big 12, 3 years in the Big 10. So that was when we were still that stupid legend leaders thing. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was always Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I mean, because it was, for me, it was like, we go to Wisconsin, first Big 10 game ever, everyone's juice game day, we just get blown out, right? And then the next year they come to us. I think they came to us and we won at home with like Joel Stavi. And then we get blown out against them in the conference championship. Like, it just was always felt like they were the rival for me when I was in school.
Okay. And yeah, and you had that Nebraska-Wisconsin tie, and they've had Nebraska's number, man. Maybe maybe Nebraska will flip it around eventually.
Well, I think a lot of it too is like everyone was like, well, Wisconsin out Nebraska, mm-hmm. right? And that always kind of like stuck in me. Like, I didn't like that. Like, because they're like, oh, they're more physical. There's like all that stuff. And like that stuck in my craw. Like, I hated that. So I always had a little bit more juice to go against those guys too.
Well, I bet. we were talking, and I think the Michigan State series, man, has always been kind of crazy, and then just weird with Northwestern. Northwestern games have always been just weird between the Hail Mary and then the upset, and even 2018 with you're up by 10 with 3 minutes left and then you lose in overtime. And so, Sirles, I want you to have safe travels. Give the best to your family, and keep grinding, brother. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Hey, absolutely great catching up with you guys as always. Go Big Red.
There he is, Jeremiah Sirles with us, our favorite sideline man and agent. And, of course, Sirles, a longtime NFL vet, member, proud dude with the Bills Mafia, former Buffalo Bill, former Charger, and former Minnesota Viking. We'll dive into some quarterback thoughts with Gary Barnett.
Speaking of quarterbacks, do you want to hear the crazy stat I heard about Tom Brady yesterday? If he were to win out this postseason, if he were to win the next 3 games, win the Super Bowl, he himself would have more playoff wins than every other franchise in the NFL.
He's there. He already leads several teams.
He only like 3 teams are ahead of him, and all of them are out of the playoffs except for the Packers, who lead him by 1. Total franchise playoff wins, lead him by 1. So if he wins out, he will overtake the Packers.
Well, that's the showdown, isn't it? I mean, if both teams do their job, you get 2.0 of that, again, in Lambeau. Good stuff from Sirles. Gary Barnett next. It's Hail Varsity Radio.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce: 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Let's say hi to the Hall of Fame coach Gary Barnett with us as we are into the recruiting season and some NFL, obviously. Coach, how's the week been? Thanks for the time.
The week's been it's been good, Chris. Just watching everything from afar. Being sort of hooked into Colorado a little bit. We've had a bunch of bad news as far as the fans are concerned. We just had a bunch of guys go in the portal. We've had 21 guys now go in the portal since the season, and we've had I think 18 since the end of the season. So of which about 7 are starters. So it's frustrating watching it all, especially from a distance and not having to do, no control that we have, and the optics on it aren't good. So you're sort of caught up in that, but it's somebody else's problem and not mine now. So it's a little easier to take.
You mentioned 7 starters and some really talented skill guys, and obviously some players that have been difference makers. And we get into this from time to time, but what do you do in today's era, Coach, as you've got to recruit new, keep old, and always keep an eye on the portal? I mean, it is a 24/7 situation for college football coaches now.
It is, and as you look at it, I was having this discussion with a friend last night, and I said, as bad as it is for coaches, it is also good for coaches because it gives you a chance to get guys out of your program that you hope that you either made a mistake on, or there's an issue of some sorts that create headaches. So it works both ways a little bit, not as much for you as against you. I think depends on where you are, but like I've said a million times already, and I know we shared it on this show, is I think the guys at the very top are really profiting by it, and maybe the guys at the very bottom and all the guys in between are trading each other's problems, one sort of or one kind of a problem or another. So I think vetting in this whole deal is really important.
That's just it. And what was your vetting process like? And I want to go to the quarterback position because that's your make or break on offense. And Nebraska did a really nice job of vetting Casey Thompson. And there's been conversations that Casey had. There's relationships that Kenny Wilhite, who's been tremendous for Nebraska, and also Mickey Joseph had with Charles Thompson. So that was some familiarity and a situation where everyone felt pretty comfortable going in, and I think this can be pretty big for Nebraska. And then also the Purdy acquisition was finalized on Monday, and I know he's a long-term guy, and that'll be big. But talk to me a minute about Coach Banker in this whole process with vetting, with an eye for talent, and then when it comes to the grooming part.
Well, I think everybody goes into the vetting process with a different approach. It just depends on a little bit of where you are, a little bit on what happens if this doesn't work. Do you have a plan? How critical is it that this vetting process has got to be perfect? I think every situation's a little bit different, and every position's a hair different. So it's not one constant you can do. And again, it comes down to your philosophy. And I always wanted a locker room that was solid and had leadership. And I really, in my mind, put a lot of weight on the attitude of my locker room. And so I wanted to know where this was going to fit in. I also normally I put a lot of pressure, not pressure, but a lot of, I took a lot from what our players said about the player when he came in. I made one big mistake over the years. I took a player because of my ego and didn't listen to my players. And you know what? He left in a year. And not that that's all bad, but I did want to give him a chance. I wanted to try to make it work, but I sort of should have known that I didn't have much of a chance going in just based on what the players who recruited him told me. So that's really important, is how the player, does he fit into our group? Is he but that goes back to my philosophy about a locker room. And I was not real willing to take a chance on somebody that I thought there was a character issue with. But everybody's a little different. Some people live and die by fixing guys' character. Looking at somebody and saying, "Yeah, he's got this issue, but I know I can fix this. I know I can handle it." Some of that's your ego saying you can do that, and some of it is just your history that you've been able to do it through the years. So everything's a little bit different. I always wanted to go into the home. I wanted to see how they reacted with their parents. I wanted to be with them in school. I wanted to go around down the hallway with them to see who they talked to and what their teachers had to say about them. And then the other thing was the other coaches in the league. I always relied on talking to the other coaches that played this particular player either in college or high school, or junior college. So, I just tried to get all I could and then make the best decision I could.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, in your years, what assistant coach or member of your staff was a wonderful voice to listen to, that the best word I can come up with is challenge you? And it wasn't in a disrespectful way, but the checks and balances that are necessary. Who was a guy that was a great checks and balance guy for you as the head guy?
Well, first of all, I didn't want a yes man. I didn't want one. It just wasn't going to get us any better. So I wanted to be challenged. And, I remember shooting my mouth off in a meeting about a couple of kids that we'd recruited. And Tom McMahon, bless his heart and rest his soul, just shot back at me just like he should have. And I was humbled, and I felt so – I just did. I said, why did you ever let that happen? And Tom was right. I don't know. Sean Watson was really good at it. Tom Cable, no question about it. You know, I had a lot of good coaches through the years, and every one of them, I hope, felt like they could tell me what they thought I should hear. Now, you know, there was a couple that didn't, but for the most part, I think that happened.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, got to look at some of the quarterbacks that are in the NFL and that are playing this weekend. Joe Burrow, of course, doing some big-time things in Cincy. Zach Taylor, people are smiling here in Lincoln with what Zach's done. Josh Allen, of course, from Wyoming. Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Tom Brady. Did you cross paths with any of these kids? Did you ever recruit any of them? Or know friends that have?
No, not really. I'm trying to think. You know, I wouldn't have been around
Brady.
Any of those guys. You know, I know that the Joe Burrow story is well known. The Mahomes story is well known. You know, Tom Brady and I are about the same age, so I'm surprised I didn't run into him. At least
same
coaching
golf,
against him.
Same
I think
golf
I
score.
coached against him. But no, this is an interesting group of quarterbacks, and it just shows you how important the quarterback is at this point in time. Josh Allen, you know, is a great story, and up in Wyoming, and an unrecruited player, and so you know, that to me that's a great story. And as I've watched things, he is a rising star. Boy, that dude is really good.
He can ball.
That first touchdown pass he threw last week was unbelievable. Just an incredible throw. And falling out of bounds down about the 15-yard line, making that throw in the snow and the rain. And not snow, but the cold. So a lot of good guys.
What's the best quarterback you've seen ever? Like either coached against or coached?
Well, in college, it was Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was – now, I saw Andrew more as I started doing broadcasting, but I saw a lot of his games. And when asked about which quarterback is most ready to go to the NFL, of all the quarterbacks, I thought he was the most ready. Peyton Manning was coaching against Peyton Manning was an absolute nightmare. And he was such a good player. And he was just like he is now in college. And he was a take-control guy. He was, you know, he was really good. You know, I've played Drew Brees when he was a freshman and a sophomore. And his freshman year, we beat Drew Brees. And I told my coaches on the way home, I said, we got him this year, but we ain't ever getting this guy again. I can tell you, he's really good. So it's a lot of good players. Gosh, I don't know. There's been so many good ones that you admire. So.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, we'll let you go after this. Do you have any picks for the weekend? Do you feel like going in on the NFL?
You know, at this level right here, I don't. It should be a crapshoot on every single game. I think Buffalo is the sleeper. I really do, and I think Los Angeles, the Rams are a sleeper as well. That getting that kid back at running back, and with those two great players on defense and a quarterback playing at the level he is, I think that's a really good football team. You know, those two teams, and I think the Packers. You know, you got to go with the Packers, but just because of Aaron Rodgers. And then, you know, the Chiefs, I still think Patrick Mahomes may be the best quarterback playing the game right now.
He is incredible, and he's got such ability and weapons. And then you look at the fit with that ability and the weaponry, and it's pretty incredible. Any ribs this weekend, yay or nay?
I'm trying to make that decision. I may hold off on the ribs till next week, but this would be a good week to do it. So I've got. You know what? I've got to pull them out of the freezer tonight if I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So
well,
I'm glad you reminded me. Thanks for reminding me.
We need you to send a pick again. I mean, we need monthly picks from Coach Barnett's ribs. Coach, you have a good weekend.
Well, Chris, before we leave, just congratulations on your award. That's awesome.
Thanks, Coach.
Proud of you, man.
I can't thank you enough for the years of putting up with me on Thursdays, man. So it's much appreciated.
It's always fun.
Take care, Coach.
All right. Bye, Chris.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
It sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for Burke's Best Bets. Daddy Burke with VSiN Sports Network at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. The Pride of Chicago as your playoff locks this weekend. Daddy, what a slate. I know a lot of blowouts last weekend, aside from the Vegas game against Cincinnati. And how about them Bengals? They're they're still alive in the playoffs. And first win in 31 years. And now they get to travel to the 1 seed Tennessee, man. And right now the Titans at -3.5. What do you like about this game? Either who you siding with or in-game prop, or how you feeling here as we get this kicked off?
Yeah, how about it, Schmitty? Zach Taylor, almost as impressive as you, Schmitty, with your major award, just like in a Christmas story. So first and foremost, got to give you major props. Well-deserved. You are the man and the voice of Husker sports in Lincoln. You are the GOAT in LNK. But moving on to the Raiders and the Bengals, my friend, this game is just making me scratch my head so much because I really like Cincinnati in this spot, Schmitty. My fear is that looking at the Bengals, it's almost like they might be like a public dog, right? Because this is kind of like almost a recency bias type of affair where, you know, you saw Cincinnati do really well against the Raiders, except the thing is, like, I don't feel like that was shocking. So I was kind of more so expecting that going into that game. And the Bengals have shown they can hang with the big boys, right? I mean, that game against Kansas City, I think, proves that they can be a legit contender. And I have knocked Cincinnati a couple of times this season. They just keep doing better and better than I expect. And I think that could be the result of this game. Now, maybe they don't win it. Maybe Tennessee does prove to be the better team, better defense, better coach, and the rest is in favor of them. But if you're giving me 3 in the hook over the key number of 3, Schmitty, I think I just got to take it with the Bengals. I think I got to trust Joe Burrow and assume that their offense with the weapons they have can expose Tennessee's defense enough. And I guess the one benefit, too, to Cincinnati is that maybe Tennessee does control some of the momentum in this game, but a lot of their control comes on the ground. So it's not going to be like big, explosive, consistent passing plays we assume. I mean, they have great receiving threats with A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, but we know they love to focus on that ground attack. So maybe that will give you more incentive to take the 3 in the hook with the Bengals because that's the way I got to lean for this matchup.
Danny, good stuff there. Let's move to Saturday night at Lambeau. We got the Packers hosting the 49ers. This is a rematch from earlier in the year. It was back in, I think, week 3. The Packers beat the 49ers 30-28. Now we get a rematch, but as we all know, all that regular season stuff gets thrown out in the playoffs. The Packers are a 5.5-point favorite.
Yeah, so the thing to keep an eye out for this game is the status of Jimmy Garoppolo. He already had his injury before the postseason with his finger, and now we've heard that he's got the issue with the shoulder that he got banged up against the Cowboys. And they're being very discreet about it naturally, like you assume they would. I'm kind of leaning toward more so of the side that he's not going to be 100% healthy. And realistically, even if he is, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo is a sufficient quarterback, but he's not necessarily the guy that's going to win you the game. It's going to be the scheming of Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff. It's going to be the defense up front, and it's going to be that running game. So with the spread, I'm so torn on this. I think maybe the best way to approach that would just be to tease down Green Bay if you're seeing a 6 and just hope that they can win it outright because San Francisco's liability defensively is their secondary. So at some point or another, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are going to have their connections and expose them. And then when you look at the other side for San Fran, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep it close because, well, their philosophy is they want to run the ball. And I think the biggest example of what they can do, look at a couple of games. On the side of San Francisco, that game prime time where they were 3.5-point dogs to the Los Angeles Rams, everybody, including myself, was on L.A., and the 49ers just running the ball, and just absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage and pounded them that game. And you saw what force they have on that side of the ball. I think they do the same thing here against Green Bay because you take, for example, that game against Cleveland, who were trailing when they were trying to pass it. Well, they go to the ground attack. Green Bay's got the 28th ranked DVOA run defense. That's the page out of the playbook that you can keep it close with Green Bay. Maybe not beat them, but keep it close. So with all of that said, Jimmy Garoppolo's status up in the air. The defense will do well enough against Rodgers, barring a couple big plays, and the 49ers will wind down the clock with the running game. I like this total to go under. I bought it up to 48 when it was at 47.5, so I paid like minus 118. I would still play it at 47, but maybe try to get that hook, but I think it's going to be the lower scoring game, probably the lowest one out of all the matchups, and that would be my best bet for this game to bet the total under.
Danny Burke with his VSiN Sports Network had Danny Burke 5, his show Rush Hour, and, of course, the Danny Burke Daily Podcast. Rams, Tampa, another rematch, and the Rams flexing all over Tampa early in the year. Do you like the Rams to keep the momentum, or do you think Tampa's going to do Tampa things and get back to another conference title game?
You know, we talk about public dogs, and I think this is going to be one of them, Schmitty, with everybody going on the Rams. And I got to disagree, actually. I think I'm going to trust Tom Brady here. And, look, I liked the Bucs a lot last year. We bet them to win the NFC at 7-1 when people kind of forgot about them. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not as infatuated with them at this point because of, like you said, the injuries they've dealt with. But defensively, they got a lot healthier. And offensively, the one injury that's a concern is Wirfs on the offensive front. He's questionable, so we'll keep an eye on that. I'm waiting for this line to get down to like 2.5, and then I might just play the Bucs outright on the money line. You take into consideration what happened with the Rams against the Cardinals. Cliff Kingsbury's been abysmal in the latter half of all of his seasons going back to college. They clearly were not ready for that game. That's not to discredit anything that the Rams did. It's just Stafford really didn't have to do anything to impress them. I mean, he only had 20 pass attempts or something like that. The Bucs will be different. They make their opponents throw the most on average in the NFL. And if you look at the sample size of what Stafford was playing like toward the end of the season, the last 4 or 5 games, it was no bueno. So I'm going to trust Tom Brady and that coaching staff over the Rams that, yeah, maybe more talented at this point, but hard to go against Brady. They play a lot better at home. And I think we're forgetting how the Rams were at the end of the season and taking too much into account of how they did against the Cardinals. So give me Bucs on the money line.
All right, it's going to be rocketed at Arrowhead. Revenge for Kansas City, or do you like Josh Allen?
Oh, man, this one it's so tough. I might just sit back and relax because what I did before the postseason, Schmitty, is I took both Flyers on their Super Bowl futures. I had Buffalo 8-1, Kansas City plus 425, with the assumption that this was going to be the matchup, and whoever wins this game will go on to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. So then at that point, I'm like, all right, well, I'll either hedge, I'll sit back and relax in the Super Bowl. You know, I'll have plenty of options on what to do with a better value before the postseason started than right before the Super Bowl. But in terms of this game, I mean, we saw Buffalo take care of business the last time at Arrowhead. It's so tough to beat a team twice, let alone twice on the road and against Patrick Mahomes. But the Bills, to me, are compared to the 2 past Super Bowl winners 2 years ago. Kansas City, touted as a favorite. People forgot about them in December, and they end up going on to win it. Last season, just alluded to Tampa Bay. People forgot about them. That's why I got the good value on them to win the NFC. They win the Super Bowl. That is Buffalo to me this season. Everybody loved them going into it, and everyone's like, Buffalo's kind of in shambles, really volatile. You can't trust them. You saw how they dismantled the Patriots when it wasn't a crazy weather game twice. I think they have the star power offensively and the number 1 defense in the league. So if you're giving me points with Buffalo, I think I got to lean in that direction.
Danny, about 10 seconds left here. Aside from the NFL slate, we also have a UFC event this weekend. Are you watching that at all?
I know I'm going to have to get involved with Ngannou, I think. But everybody's betting the other way with that other guy. I can't remember his name, but I'm going to have to do a little bit more research tomorrow. But it's hard to go against Ngannou, that's for sure.
Yeah, Ngannou's got that technical ability, and Ngannou's got the knockout power. So I'm going Ngannou.
Yeah, hard to disagree, my friend. Hard to disagree. Should be a fun one regardless.
Danny Burke with us, Burke's Best Bets. Danny, have a good weekend. Thanks for the time, man.
Hey, you guys are the best. Take care.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor. I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Awesome stuff today. Jeremiah Sirles on the NFL, on being an agent, on Josh Allen. Making sure his linemen treat him right. That'll be on the ESPN Lincoln SoundCloud. Wonderful stuff from Brandon Vogel and his project on Hail Varsity, going through all the Big Ten ball games for Nebraska and the memorable factor here and some craziness to think about there. Believe it or not, I do know today that Nebraska basketball is in COVID pause for the men for Saturday. So, yes, that game, I know, Elijah, is paused, which is big.
Good work.
Yeah, right? Doing your job. Doing your job. Gary Barnett on quarterbacking and Danny Burke with best bets. Tomorrow we'll dive a little further into the Gretna decision. Check that, the NSAA's decision to vacate Gretna's football championship. A lot of outrage, and understandably so, with that from folks up. My brother's in the Gretna district, and folks are absolutely fired up about it. So we'll have some thoughts on that. Jacob Padilla will join us. He'll preview the weekend of prep basketball. Bill Dolman, Pratt of Fairbury, will talk some Huskers and some NFL with us. A reminder to get buckled up. Your friends at the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Hands on the wheel, eyes and mind straight ahead. The driver has one job to drive. And this message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. I just, if it comes down to a situation where you have a kid who's a junior who transferred from Papio South to Gretna, because mom and dad are separated, and they didn't have legal documentation of it, that shouldn't cost a school and a community a championship. Now, if you're the NSAA and you're up to your ears in transfers and the climate that exists in sports where you've got team hopping and you need to shut it down, this is your, I'm not saying they did this, but this is your window to make an example of somebody.
But I feel for the kid in this situation.
The family. I mean, the kid's going through a situation where it's a separation. That sucks.
He had to make the very tough choice to leave his school. Who am I going to live with? And he chose to go live with his father, which meant he had to leave his school and go find a new school, step into a new environment. And one of the places that you go find camaraderie and go find new friends at a new school is you go join the football team. You go join a team just in general, and you go make friends there. And now he's getting punished and losing a state title because of that. It's awful.
It's not the kid's fault. And you wonder who started the ball rolling on this investigation, right? And I started the show off saying there's two reasons you lose or you vacate wins. Kid's too old, or he's ineligible academically, failed too many courses. Well, this is the third, the domicile situation. So enjoy your Thursday. Great basketball tonight. Connor Clark here on ESPN Lincoln. Motzi over on KFOR with Southwest and Northeast. Talk to you tomorrow at 4.
A Hurrdat Media Production.